welcome to Make It with Madison. Today we'll be making this Scrappy Potholder. I don't know if you have this problem or not, but I've been sewing a lot of projects lately and I have a whole big grocery bag just stuffed with fabric scraps. So in my quest to use these fabric scraps, I found these pot holders. So I'm probably going to make a few more, and hopefully that makes a dent in my scraps. But if you're interested in learning how to make one of these, keep watching. So what I like to do before any project is make sure I lay out the fabric, make sure I have the fabric I want. So I've got this big bag of just fabric scraps from other projects. So I laid out a few different kinds here that I thought would go well together. I was originally gonna do more of a red and white theme, but then I found that I have a lot more blue fabric, so we're going with more of the blues. I already have some placemats with this fabric, so I think it'd be really cute if I did a matching pot holder with that. I think it'd be cute to include some more of this flower fabric, that way it kind of ties in with the first pot holder I made. So just go through your scraps, or if you're working with a whole piece of fabric, make sure it's the type of fabric you want before you start sewing. Alright, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that you will also need batting. Any scrap batting will do if you want to sew some pieces together to make a big enough piece you can. I just happen to have a lot of extra scrap batting. The circle will be about 9 inches in diameter, so you'll need about a circle with a 9-inch diameter for the batting. So you really shouldn't need too much. You can double layer it. My batting's a little thin, so I like double layering it, but it's up to you. Next, I'm just gonna iron out some of my scrap pieces. They've been in that bag for a little while, so some of them have creases and wrinkles and stuff, and I generally like to iron everything out before I start sewing. It just makes the whole sewing project a lot easier, so I'm gonna start ironing. Okay, now that that's done, we can start sewing. Okay, next you're gonna start taking your fabric. Got these two pieces right here. If you don't have a straight edge, like take this one for example, it's kind of rounded here, and then there's others that are kind of like a zigzag, but I like to cut them straight if the piece is big enough. That way you've got two straight edges to start with. It makes it really easy. So I've got these two pieces here. You're just gonna put one down on the other. That way the right sides are facing each other. I think I heard someone on TikTok say before, so the pretty sides are facing each other. The wrong side should be out. So you're just gonna sew along this line here to connect the two pieces. I'm leaving about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on this. And you shouldn't even have to pin it in place if you do this well enough. Like if you hold down the fabric on your own, it should stay together pretty well since these are just small pieces. I could cut it here. And there we go. We've got our first two pieces sewn together. Alright, so as you can see here, I've sewn a few more patches together. Now I have this next piece that I'm going to add on the top. It's going to be a little longer, so I am pinning this piece into place. After that, I might need to add a little bit more, but we're pretty close to having the first piece done. Okay, I'm back. This is my finished scrap front. As you can see, it's not like perfectly measured or anything. I just kind of went with what size the scraps were and went from there. The last pot holder I made, I measured with the bottom of this lampshade. You can use anything rounded. If you want to make a square one, you could measure that out. But I just used the bottom of this lampshade because it was the easiest. And you're just going to put it over your scrap fabric on a table or something, like that. And then you're going to trace the shape you want it, the exact measurements, and then you'll take it to your cutting board and cut it out, or grab your scissors. Little cutting problem with this one, but it's done now. That's what the front looks like. So you're just going to repeat that for the back. Same size circle here with a 9-inch diameter, or whatever you want to use to trace it. You can make it as big or as small as you want. But yeah, go ahead and get started on making your back piece. But if you do want to break, you can always cut the batting, because the batting's going to be the exact same size too. So by the time you've got all your pieces together, you should have 2 scrappy pieces cut into circles like this, and then 1 or 2 pieces of batting cut the same size. Alright, so the back's all finished now, the front should be finished, the 2 middle pieces of batting should be cut, or 1 if you're using 1. And you're just going to make a batting sandwich here where you put 1 piece of the fabric down, and then you're going to put the batting over the wrong side of it, and then you're going to take your other side of fabric and you're going to place it over that, sandwiching the batting in the middle. And once that's all put together, you're gonna take some clips or pins or whatever you prefer to use and just secure it all in place. Since there's so many layers, we want to make sure it stays where it's supposed to. That's been secured. We're gonna start the quilting part, and that's when you're just stitching lines all the way across to attach all the layers together. All the layers of material and binding, because that's technically what quilting is stitching all those together. Now if you want, you can do like fancy lines, you can do crisscross, you can stitch in the ditch, which is basically just following these lines that you made already. I'm gonna kind of go a little crazy with mine. If you can see, like from the first pot holder I made, they're not straight, they're crooked, they kind of go all over the place. So I'm probably gonna follow the same technique with this one, but feel free to stitch across however you want, whatever look you're going for. Like, I typically like to stitch in the ditch and then add extra lines because you want it to be as flat and together as possible. Now we have our pot holder all finished. Should be finished quilting it. I don't know if you can see the lines, but I'm satisfied with the amount of lines I have in mine. It's a lot flatter than it was. It shouldn't be super poofy anymore. The sewing, the stitches should have condensed it a lot, made it more like a pot holder. So now you might notice all the raw edges that we still have left. To finish those, you can use bias tape. I like using bias tape just because it makes it 100 times easier. But if you really want, you could also make your own like finishing tape like this out of scraps or out of other fabric you might have. It's literally just folded in half, like folded in fourths, I guess, because the edges are folded over and then it's folded in half. So the way I'm gonna put this on my pot holder is I'm gonna start by cutting about the length I'll need, which it should be about 30 inches, give or take a couple, depending on if you're gonna put a little loop on the top or not. Like this first one I made here. Probably gonna do the same thing with this one, so make sure you cut a little extra. If you want an easy way to measure it, just put it around your already sewn base here and measure it off of that. So when you first start sewing that on, you're gonna kind of start by sewing it backwards because this hides the seam, the first line of stitching that you're gonna do. So I'll show you how that looks here in a little bit. All right, here's what you're gonna do with the bias tape. You're gonna unfold it like that. You're gonna take this top fourth and you're gonna pin it here. If you want, you can pin it. If you don't want to, that's fine. I normally pin this first one in place though, that way it's super straight. You're just gonna line it up with the edge there and just pin it all along, like around, and you should pin it pretty much up till it meets up with the back end here. And when you start sewing, you're gonna sew in the crease right there, as close to it as you can, because the closer you're able to get to that crease, the neater your finished bias tape edge is gonna look. So when you're done, it should look kind of like that, because you only have the one side stitched down almost all the way around. I can fit my finger in this gap where I didn't stitch, but it's easier to make the loop if you leave a little gap, so I would recommend leaving about a finger width gap. So once it looks like this, it's kind of curled over on that one side. You can flip it to the other side. It should just kind of fold over naturally. So now your bias tape should be on both sides, and don't worry if it starts to curve in like this. It might look like a bowl kinda. It just needs to be ironed out and flattened out a little bit. So if you want to take the time now to go to your ironing board and iron it out, you can do that. Make sure it's laying flat before you start the next step. This next part, you'll be attaching the other side with the bias tape. And you'll notice the first side we stitched, the stitching's totally invisible because it's not on the inside. So this seam should be the only one that's visible on the bias tape that we're about to do. So it doesn't need pinned in place because it's already been stitched on the other side. What you're gonna do is very slowly go around with your sewing machine and connect that other side so it's not just flapping loosely like that. And you wanna get as close to the edge as possible to make that finished seam look really professional and nice. But don't go over the bias tape, obviously, because then you don't connect it. So just go slow and make sure that all your stitches are right on the edge of that bias tape. And this is what it should look like at this point. Completely attached on this side with your finished stitching, and completely finished on this side as well. So now you just have this extra hanging part for your loop. I'm gonna walk you through that in just a bit. Okay, for the loop, you're gonna start by covering up this raw edge here. And what I did was kind of like tuck it over it like this, and then put in a few stitches here just to hold it in place for the base of your loop, and then loop it around the back like this and stitch to secure it in the back, and then just trim off the extra that you have. Just play around with it until you get the look you want, but again, I would start with covering up that raw edge at the beginning and doing a couple stitches here to secure it before you start. And here's the finished product. It's all sewn together, all done. Here's the front, here's the back. It's still a little wonky, but after it gets washed, it'll lay flat just fine. It'll be a good pot holder. And feel free to make multiples like I did. They make great sets, great gifts for people, and they use up a lot of fabric scraps, so that's great too. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and making these scrappy pot holders with me. If there's anything else you would like me to make a tutorial for, please leave a comment below and I will take your suggestion into consideration. I also have a blog online with a lot of written instructions on how to do crafts, especially sewing, crochet. I also have recipes. If you would like to see those, you could look me up on makeitwithmadison.com. Otherwise, I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.